Liaozhai Quantu, or Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, is a famous collection of short stories by Qing Dynasty writer Pu Songling, filled with tales of fox spirits, ghosts, and mystical creatures. Today, we'll continue exploring the Liaozhai Quantu, an illustrated series from the Guangxu period, which brings Pu Songling's stories to life in a sequence of vividly painted scenes. This rare collection, now dispersed around the world, consists of approximately 90 volumes. Last time, we discussed the 38th volume, although 2 volumes are missing. Today, we'll delve into the 41st volume, featuring 5 stories: Pianpian, the cricket, Xiang Gao, the Strange Pigeon, and Jiangcheng. The first story from this volume is called Pianpian. It tells of Luo Zifu, a young man from Binzhou, whose parents died early, leaving him to be raised by his wealthy uncle, Luo Dai, who treated him as his own son. Luo Dai held a prestigious government position and hoped for a promising future for his nephew. But when Zifu was 14, he fell into bad company and was led astray, eventually becoming infatuated with a courtesan from Jinling. When she returned to her hometown, he impulsively left everything behind and followed her, spending half a year in a brothel until he ran out of money. Sick and destitute, he was eventually cast out, becoming a beggar wandering the streets in shame. One evening, as he was looking for shelter, Zifu encountered a beautiful woman who appeared like a celestial being. She offered him refuge in her mountain home, a mystical cave surrounded by a stream and filled with light. She instructed him to bathe in the stream, miraculously healing his wounds, and later provided him with a garment made from large leaves, which transformed into soft, luxurious green silk. The woman, who revealed herself as Pianpian, welcomed him into her care, nourishing him with enchanted foods made from leaves and wine created from mountain springs. Soon, a friend of Pianpian's named Chang arrived, humorously calling him the playful little ghost. Attracted to Chang's beauty, Zifu tried to flirt with her, but each time he entertained these impure thoughts, his magical clothing transformed back into ordinary leaves, reminding him to control his desires. Pianpian and Chang playfully mocked him, calling him a mischievous boy who ought to freeze to death for his mischief. Over time, Zifu's life in the cave grew peaceful, and he and Pianpian eventually had a son together. Their son, who was remarkably intelligent, was raised with the gentle teachings of Pianpian, who used leaves to write characters and taught him as if he were her apprentice. When Zifu began to feel homesick, Pianpian encouraged him to return to his family, explaining that he belonged to the mortal world, while she was bound to the spirit realm. She offered to send their son with him, confident that he would prosper among humans. Years later, when Zifu returned with his son and new daughter-in-law, his family was astonished and delighted by his return. However, when they looked at their clothing, it reverted back to its original form, bananas leaves held together by threads of mist. Soon after, Zifu returned to the mountains, hoping to find Pianpian again. But upon arrival, he found only a path covered in golden leaves and clouds obscuring the entrance to the cave. Pianpian had vanished, leaving him with only memories of their time together. The storyteller reflects, Pianpian and Chang were likely both immortals, capable of transforming the simplest elements into miraculous creations. Yet despite their powers, they loved, laughed, and raised a family just as humans do. And just as Liu Chen and Yuan Zhao of the Han Dynasty lost their way while seeking the fairy maidens of Tiantai, so too did Luo Zifu lose his chance to reunite with his celestial love. The cricket. During the Xuande reign of the Ming Dynasty, the royal court had a peculiar fascination with cricket fighting and annually demanded the best crickets from the common folk. Although crickets were not indigenous to Shanxi province, a county official from Huayin, eager to win favor with his superiors, decided to offer a particularly impressive cricket as tribute. His superior was pleased with the cricket's bravery and fighting prowess, and ordered the county official to supply more of these fierce little creatures regularly. To fulfill this duty, the county official passed the responsibility to the village leaders. Thus, young men in the city, known for idling their time, began capturing prime crickets, keeping them in bamboo cages, and driving up their prices by treating them as rare commodities. The town's cunning officers exploited this situation to extract fees from the villagers, driving many households to ruin in their desperation to procure crickets for the court. In this town, there was a scholar named Cheng Ming, a reserved and mild-mannered man who had failed the local exams many times. His quiet nature made him an easy target for the local officials, who reported him to the county head and coerced him into serving as a village leader. Unable to refuse, Cheng Ming found himself entangled in an endless cycle of expenses, which drained his meager savings. When the time came for another cricket requisition, Cheng Ming was devastated. He neither had the means to collect money from others nor the funds to cover the cost himself. Despairing and ashamed, he considered ending his life, but his wife persuaded him to try catching a cricket himself, however slim his chances of success might be. From dawn till dusk, Cheng Ming roamed the fields, bamboo tube in hand, peering into crevices, overturning stones, and digging near old walls and thick grass. Yet he only managed to catch 2 or 3 feeble little crickets, none of which met the required standard. The county head grew impatient, setting a strict deadline. Within 10 days, Cheng Ming had suffered over 100 lashes, leaving his legs raw and bloodied. Confined to his bed, he was too weak to continue searching for crickets. One day, a hunched-back village fortune-teller arrived. This old woman was known for her ability to commune with spirits and foretell people's fortunes. Cheng Ming's wife prepared a small offering and visited her for help. Upon entering the dimly lit hut, she saw a group of hopeful villagers, both young and old, anxiously awaiting their turn. Each visitor burned incense, bowed deeply, and waited for the old woman's prayer. After some murmured words, a slip of paper would mysteriously appear from behind a curtain, accurately answering their innermost questions. When it was finally her turn, Cheng Ming's wife presented her offering, prayed earnestly, and waited. Eventually, a slip of paper dropped in front of her. However, it wasn't inscribed with words but bore a drawing. A shrine surrounded by peculiar stones and overgrown thorn bushes, with a single cricket resting among the rocks. A toad crouched beside it, as though ready to leap. She couldn't make sense of the cryptic image, but seeing a cricket drawn on the paper gave her hope. She carefully folded the slip and hurried home to show it to her husband. After examining the drawing closely, Cheng Ming noticed that the shrine in the image resembled an old temple to the east of their village. Despite his injuries, he grabbed a walking stick and set off to find the location. As he reached the temple, he saw a mound covered with fish scale-like stones and overgrown with grass and thorn bushes, just as depicted in the drawing. He leaned down, focusing all his senses, and began a meticulous search. He was on the brink of giving up when he caught sight of a toad leaping past him, matching the omen from the fortune-teller's slip. Following the toad's path, he finally spotted a cricket nestled among the thorns. Overjoyed, Cheng Ming coaxed the cricket into his bamboo tube. Upon close inspection, he was amazed by its vibrant colors and strong build, features far superior to any cricket he had seen before. Treating it as a precious treasure, he carefully carried it home, where he and his family celebrated their newfound hope. They cared for the cricket diligently, feeding it crab meat and chestnut powder to strengthen it, eagerly awaiting the day to present it to the county. One day, while Cheng Ming was away, his young son, barely 9 years old, couldn't resist peeking into the cricket's enclosure. In a swift leap, the cricket escaped, and though the boy scrambled to catch it, he accidentally injured the delicate creature in his clumsy grasp. Devastated, he ran to tell his mother, who was equally horrified. She knew the consequences would be dire. Frightened, the boy fled the house and hid. When Cheng Ming returned and heard what had happened, his heart froze in anguish. Angered and hopeless, he searched for his son, only to find him lying at the bottom of a well, lifeless. Overwhelmed with grief, Cheng Ming and his wife prepared to bury him. Yet, as they neared the boy, they felt a faint breath. Overjoyed, they brought him inside and cared for him through the night until he finally woke, although weak and dazed. The next morning, Cheng Ming, sleepless and despondent, suddenly heard a familiar chirping sound. Following the sound, he spotted a small, fierce-looking cricket with a distinct red and black pattern perched nearby. Though it was smaller than his previous cricket, he recognized its keen fighting spirit and decided to offer it to the county head, hoping against hope that it would suffice. When he presented the small cricket, the county head sneered at its size, but Cheng Ming insisted on testing its prowess. To everyone's amazement, the little cricket defeated every rival, even holding its own against a hen that was thrown in to test its mettle. Word of this remarkable cricket spread, and it soon caught the attention of the emperor himself. Ultimately, the small but mighty cricket was brought to the royal palace, where it was kept in a golden cage and defeated every competitor in the court's lavish cricket fighting tournaments. Thanks to this unlikely champion, Cheng Ming and his family were not only spared, but were handsomely rewarded. And from that day on, Cheng Ming never ceased to marvel at the extraordinary chain of events that had brought his family from ruin to redemption, all through the fierce spirit of a humble little cricket. Xiang Gao, courtesy name Chadon, was from Taiwan. He shared a particularly strong bond with his elder half-brother, Xiang Sheng was involved with a woman named Bosi, who made her living in a way that society frowned upon. The two had pledged lifelong loyalty to each other, even going so far as to make a blood pact. However, due to the high price demanded by Bosi's madam, they had never been able to marry. At that time, the madam was contemplating retirement and expressed a willingness to arrange for Bosi's marriage. A man named Zhuang, who had long admired Bosi, asked the madam if he could purchase her as a concubine. Hearing this, Bosi approached her madam, saying, "Since you and I both desire to leave this dark life behind, selling me as a concubine would be no better than staying as I am. If you truly care about my happiness, only Shang is worthy of my heart." The madam agreed and conveyed her decision to Xiang. Having recently lost his wife and not yet remarried, he was overjoyed and gathered all the money he could to marry Bosi. When Zhuang heard about this, he was furious at having lost the woman he had desired. One day, he ran into Xiang on the street, and in a fit of rage, he began to insult him. Xiang retorted, so Zhuang ordered his attendants to beat Xiang mercilessly. By the time they stopped, Xiang was on the brink of death. Xiang Gao rushed to his brother's side upon hearing the news, but by the time he arrived, his brother had already passed away. Xiang Gao was overwhelmed with grief and anger as he prepared a formal complaint to bring to the county capital. However, Zhuang had bribed officials at all levels, leaving Xiang Gao's legitimate grievances unheard. His fury festered with no outlet for his frustrations, and he resolved to assassinate Zhuang on the road. Each day, he carried a sharp dagger and lay in wait in the tall grass along the mountain paths. As time passed, news of his intentions leaked out, and Zhuang became aware of the threat, increasing his vigilance whenever he left the house. Hearing that a brave and skilled archer named Jiao Tong from Fenzhou was available, Zhuang paid a substantial sum to hire him as his bodyguard. Unable to execute his plan, Xiang Gao continued to wait by the roadside every day. One day, just as he settled into hiding, a torrential downpour began, soaking him to the skin and leaving him shivering in the cold. Soon, fierce winds kicked up, accompanied by hail. Xiang Gao suddenly lost all sensation, becoming numb to pain and discomfort. Remembering a mountain shrine he had previously visited, he forced himself to run there. Upon entering, he encountered a familiar Taoist monk, someone he had often given food to when the monk had begged in the village. Recognizing Xiang Gao's plight, the monk handed him a cloth robe, saying, "Put this on for now." Grateful? Xiang Gao changed into the robe and crouched down against the cold, trembling like a dog. As he looked at his body, he was astonished to see fur sprouting, transforming him into a tiger. The Taoist monk had vanished, leaving Xiang Gao both surprised and enraged. However, upon reflection, he thought that this new form could help him track down his enemy and take his revenge. He descended the mountain to the spot where he had hidden before, only to discover his own lifeless body lying in the grass. Realizing that his human form was dead, he felt a pang of fear that crows or hawks might consume it, and he began to guard his remains diligently. The next day, Zhuang finally passed by the fateful spot. Out of nowhere, the tiger leaped from the underbrush, knocking him clean off his horse and sinking its teeth into him with a savage fury. Startled, Jiao Tong, Zhuang's bodyguard, turned his horse and drew his bow, loosing an arrow into the tiger's belly. The arrow struck true, and the beast staggered, then collapsed, dead. Meanwhile, in a nearby thicket, Xiang Gao awoke, dazed and disoriented, as if roused from a strange, vivid dream. It took him another night to recover enough to walk, and in the morning he stumbled home, still groggy and unsure of what had happened. His family, anxious from his days-long absence, was startled, then relieved to see him. They surrounded him, offering comfort and asking what had happened, but he only lay there, slow to respond, lost in a strange stupor. Later, word reached them that Zhuang had been killed by a tiger. Overjoyed at this news, his family rushed to his side to share it. To their astonishment, Xiang Gao muttered, "I was that tiger," and began to recount the bizarre, otherworldly events that had befallen him. His story quickly spread, capturing the fascination of the entire village. Upon hearing of his father's gruesome death, Zhuang's son, stricken with grief and rage, accused Xiang Gao of murder and sought justice. But when he brought his case to the authorities, they found the tale so fantastical, with no solid evidence, that they dismissed it as pure folly. Yi Shi, the historian, commented, "A warrior's true victory often demands his life. Such is the age-old tragedy. For a man to borrow a beast's form to take vengeance and yet live, such sorcery indeed seems miraculous. Yet in a world teeming with unspeakable wrongs, those who burn with righteous fury remain bound by their human forms, tragically unable to become tigers, if only for a moment, to exact justice." The peculiar tale of the doves. There are countless types of doves. In Shanxi, there's the kunxing, in Shandong, the hexiu, Guizhou boasts the yeti, Henan is known for its fandiao, and the Wu Yue region has the zhujian. Each is a prized breed, cherished by those who know their worth. There are also breeds with colorful names like the boothead, dot-eye, big white, blackstone, lover's sparrow, and flower-eyed dog, among many others, each unique in its way. Only the true dove enthusiasts can tell them apart. In Zuping County, there lived a young noble named Zhang Yuliang, a passionate dove lover. Inspired by the Book of Doves, he sought to collect all the famous breeds in the world. He cared for his doves as if they were his own children, treating them with powdered herbs in the winter and feeding them salt grains in the summer. Since doves are prone to becoming paralyzed if they sleep too much, Jang even devised a method to prevent this. He had acquired a special dove in Guangxu for 10 silver taels, a tiny creature that could not sit still, constantly circling about unless held in place. By night, he let it wander among the other doves, keeping them awake to ward off paralysis. This unique dove was known as the night roamer. In Shandong, where dove rearing was taken seriously, Zhang's reputation was unmatched, and he took great pride in his skill. One evening, while Jang was alone in his study, a young man dressed in white knocked on his door. Unfamiliar with him, Jang asked who he was. The stranger replied, "A wanderer of no particular name. I heard you keep a remarkable collection of doves, and as a lover of doves myself, I would like to see them." Pleased, Jang showed him his flock. They dazzled in every hue, gleaming like silk. The youth smiled, saying, "Your reputation is well deserved. Truly, you have gathered a treasure trove of doves. I, too, have a few. Would you like to see them?" Intrigued, Jang agreed. Under the soft moonlight, Jang followed the young man into the countryside, feeling a slight sense of unease. The young man pointed ahead. "Just a bit further. My home is close by." Soon they arrived at a small monastery with only 2 rooms. The youth pulled Jang inside, where shadows shrouded the courtyard in darkness. Standing at its center, the young man mimicked a dove's cooing, and out of nowhere, 2 doves appeared, their feathers pure white. They flew to the roof, calling to each other as they swooped and flipped through the air. Each time they clashed midair, they did a graceful somersault. At the young man's signal, the pair vanished. The young man made another strange sound, and this time, 2 more doves appeared. One was as large as a duck, the other no bigger than a fist. The larger dove stretched its neck, spreading its wings like a peacock, as if performing a dance to woo its tiny partner. The small dove flitted about, perching atop the larger one's head, its wings fluttering delicately. Their calls intertwined in perfect harmony, each sound as clear as chimes ringing from stone. Zhang watched, entranced, realizing his own doves could never match this beauty. He bowed to the young man, begging to buy a few of these miraculous birds. The young man declined, But seeing Zhang's earnestness, he whistled again. 2 white doves landed on his hand, and he handed them to Zhang, saying, "Here, take these as a token of my respect." Zhang examined them under the moonlight. Their eyes glowed amber, like pure crystals, with pupils black as peppercorns. Lifting their wings, he saw their transparent skin, so clear that their organs were visible. He marveled at their beauty and implored the youth for more. But the young man demurred, saying, "I have others, but it would be disrespectful to show them now." Just then, one of Zhang's servants appeared with a torch. As Zhang turned to thank the youth, he saw a large white dove instead, glowing like the moon, soaring into the night. The courtyard, the rooms, the entire scene vanished, leaving only a humble grave and 2 cypress trees. Zhang returned home with his 2 doves, finding them remarkably tame. Over 2 years, they even bred, producing 3 pairs of offspring, such precious birds he never parted with, no matter who requested them. One day, a noble friend of Zhang's father visited, admiring his collection. Zhang hesitated, reluctant to give any away, but unable to refuse an elder. He reluctantly chose his best pair of white doves and presented them to the guest, feeling as though he was offering a priceless treasure. Days later, Zhang met the nobleman and eagerly asked, "How did you find my gift?" The nobleman replied casually, "Quite plump." Shocked, Zhang exclaimed, "You cooked them?" The man nodded, unconcerned. "Yes, they tasted fine." Horrified, Zhang revealed that they were rare Tartar gems, not ordinary doves. The nobleman shrugged. "Tasted like any other dove." That night, Zhang dreamed of the youth in white, now stern and dismayed. "I entrusted my precious children to you, and you delivered them to death. You have betrayed my trust. I am leaving, and I take all I gave you." The youth transformed into a great white dove, and Zhang's entire flock rose and flew away with him. At dawn, the doves were gone. Filled with regret, Zhang gifted his remaining doves to friends, and within days his dovecote was empty. Historian's commentary: objects of love and beauty gravitate toward those who appreciate them, like the dragon that sought out Lord Ye. This story speaks to that age-old truth, except curiously, money is not among such things, desired yet elusive, avoiding the grasp of even the most devoted. The story of Jiangcheng. In the town of Linjiang, there lived a young man named Gao Fan, renowned for his sharp mind and graceful appearance. At the age of 14, he joined the county school, and the wealthiest families were eager to offer their daughters in marriage to him. Yet Gao Fan was particular in his choice of a bride, repeatedly defying his father's wishes. His father, Gao Zhonghong, was over 60 and had only this one son whom he indulged dearly, unable to bring himself to deny his son anything. When Gao Fan was a child, an old man named Fan, who lived in the neighboring village, rented a house from the Gao family. He had a young daughter called Jiangcheng, who was the same age as Gao Fan. The 2 children played together every day, bound by the pure friendship of childhood. Eventually, Fan moved away, and over the years, the families lost touch. One day, while walking through a narrow alley, Gao Fan spotted a young lady of breathtaking beauty, accompanied by a maid. He dared not look at her directly and only stole glances from the corner of his eye. The girl paused and gazed at him as if wanting to speak. When Gao Fan took a closer look, he was delighted to realize it was Jiangcheng. They stood there, silent, merely exchanging glances filled with a hint of affection. Gao Fan, before leaving, deliberately dropped a red handkerchief on the ground. The maid picked it up, thrilled, and handed it to the young lady, who tucked it into her sleeve. Then, pretending not to recognize him, she told the maid, "He is no stranger. Go and return this to him." The maid obediently handed it back to Gao Fan. Overjoyed, Gao Fan returned home, urging his mother to arrange a marriage with Jiangcheng. His mother hesitated, saying, "Jiangcheng's family has nothing, no house to their name. How could she be a match for us?" But Gao Fan insisted, "She is the one I wish to marry, and I shall never regret it." Reluctantly, his mother went to visit Jiangcheng's family under the guise of making an offering at a nearby shrine. Upon seeing the graceful beauty of Jiangcheng, she was won over. She gave the Fan family gifts of money and silk and formally proposed the marriage. After some initial polite refusals, the family accepted the match. Months later, Gao Fan and Jiangcheng were wed, and the couple's life seemed blissful. But Jiangcheng had a fiery temper and a sharp tongue, often nagging and quarreling. Gao Fan, besotted with her, tolerated her rants. Yet his parents, hearing about these episodes, were displeased. One day they gently scolded their son, but Jiangcheng overheard, flew into a rage, and scolded Gao Fan even more fiercely. One night, after a particularly harsh argument, Jiangcheng locked Gao Fan out in the cold, forcing him to shiver under the eaves. His parents, unable to bear the humiliation, eventually asked her to leave. Jiangcheng's father, feeling guilty, begged for her return, but Gao's father refused. However, Gao Fan missed her and secretly visited Jiangcheng at her father's house. They met in secret, renewing their bond despite the bitter disapproval from both families. Finally, Jiangcheng's father attempted to reconcile with Gao's family, but this only rekindled old tensions. Gao's father was adamant that Gao Fan move out and live separately with Jiangcheng, hoping it would bring peace. Though they lived apart, Jiangcheng's temper only grew worse. She constantly berated and beat Gao Fan, leaving scratches and bruises on his face. His parents observed this in silent frustration, no longer daring to intervene. Gao Fan felt trapped, torn between love and fear, as his wife's temper flared like a wild flame. Seeking solace, he began a secret affair with a courtesan. Yet Jiangcheng soon discovered his betrayal. In a dramatic confrontation, she caught him and berated him ruthlessly, stripping him of his dignity. Her wrath was unyielding, her pride fierce. The once graceful Jiangcheng had transformed into a tempest in Gao Fan's life, an inescapable storm that neither separation nor appeasement could calm. Thank you for watching Eastern Brush, Western Soul, where we explore the world of ancient books and Eastern ink painting. Today, we wrapped up the fascinating tales from the complete illustrations of Liao Zhai in Volume 41. Our next journey will take us to Volume 47, as the 5 volumes in between remain lost to history. We look forward to sharing more stories from Volume 47 with you soon. Until then, see you next time.